So hi, my name's Pauline Miller. I'm the director of Personal Touch Funerals. I started Personal Touch Funerals in November 2010. I come from a family, as probably many West Indians do, where their parents love to talk about their funerals. We were definitely the children, and we know there's still many of them, that when they have this conversation, those plates that needed washing, that didn't have anybody to wash them, found many, many volunteers because we did not want to be around to hear this conversation. It was doom and gloom, we felt. So mum and dad, coming from a Christian background, they spoke about death quite a bit. And eventually, sadly, in age, dementia set in for my mother. She started a series of falls, and one of the falls unfortunately resulted in her death. So now we were forced to go out into that wide world to find out what was funeral planning. And it was quite daunting, we found. We really didn't know what we were doing, didn't matter how intelligent we were or how well we spoke. Really, we were kids who just lost their parents or their mother. And everything at the time I felt was clouded in mystery. We couldn't get straight answers. And that for me caused a lot of confusion, caused a lot of anger. And so after doing mum's funeral, I took all the notes of the things that I felt just weren't there, that should be there. And I started the business. Mum passed in August 2010, and I started the business in November 2010. And the key thing for me, it was about giving somebody everything that they needed, if possible, in one place. So they didn't have to do what we call the amazing race headless routine, chicken routine, where they're running from place to place, not quite knowing what it is that they need to get, but knowing that they need to get it fast because they're being told this funeral needs to happen in a couple of weeks. Lots of hysteria, lots of confusion, lots of fear. And so Personal Touch Funeral Planning Services is, as its name suggests, it does everything for the client and advises, and then we'll organise whatever aspects they want us to organise. So what does we organise and deliver everything exactly mean? Surprisingly, we have found that that is one of the most difficult things for people to understand because it's never been done before we did it. There was no funeral planning service that would organise all aspects of a funeral. So typically what is needed to have a funeral day are three cores. You need to have either the date for the cemetery or the crematorium, if you're having a burial or cremation. If you're going to have a church service, then you need to see, does the church fit in line with the cemetery and the crematorium? And sometimes that's the other way around, because if your person went to a church that they particularly want to use, then you want to definitely find out if that church is available and the dates, and then you're going to use those dates, and they're going to be your guide to find out if your cemetery or crematorium is available. And then the third one that we forget is you need to have a reception. If you're going to have something after, the reception also needs to be available on that date. When those three are in line, then you've got a funeral date. What we do is we can plan every aspect of all of those three in one place. One phone call, typically 2 appointments, and we will find out from you what it is that you want. We will understand what your budget is, and we will help you plan everything for those three to fit ideally within your budget. I mean, come on, sometimes we know our budget's unrealistic, but we know budget is our guideline, but it can't be our God. Because if we are, in many cases, we don't know what a funeral entails or how much it actually costs. So we might have a figure and say we don't ideally want to go above that. But with knowledge, you get power. And once you've got that, you know exactly how to then organize the finances that you've got to deliver a beautiful day for your person. So we're unique. We do everything. So what, in our opinion, makes a successful funeral? There are a number of components and things to think about. One of the key things I always say is let the person that you're celebrating be your guide. You're going to look at doing a day for them that's going to honour and celebrate them. For many in the West Indian cultures, and for many cultures in actual fact, it's about the celebration of life rather than the commiseration of the person passing. We are never going to be able to take away that sadness. But what we want to do is to put things in place that ensure that when we look at what we've put in place, it makes us smile, it makes our hearts feel good, it makes us feel proud, particularly if we are children and immediate loved ones, that we have given our person the best send-off that we can give them. Organisation and knowledge is definitely power. So we totally understand and we totally agree that you are to try to find out as much as you can about what the things cost and what different services different people provide, because there are core services that everybody has as a funeral director. They're going to give you a horse and carriage or a hearse. They're going to give you limousines, coffins, pick your persons up, look after them. But then there are some others that are specific to different funeral directors. For example, we have created a number of packages, and those packages are done from the knowledge of what we did with Mum and then sadly Dad a couple of years later. We know that these are things you're going to need. You're going to need, as we said, the cause, but you're also going to need funeral programs. You're going to need flowers. Then you've got specifics. Do you want doves? Do you want balloons? Do you want singers? All those little personal touches that will make your day special. So we agree that yes, you should ring around and ensure that you get as much knowledge as possible and see how the pricing differs. But the key thing I want to remind you of is that don't run out of time. When I say that, we have a lot of people who are so focused on finding out what costs are that they forget that their loved one has passed. And the natural process of someone having passed is taking place. Unless they are collected quickly, gone to your selected funeral director to be embalmed so that you can then say goodbye to them, you are going to run the risk that you might not be able to see them again. And that is something we find that no one is thinking about. All they're doing in lots of cases is everybody's ringing around to find out what price, and also looking at dates that don't actually take into consideration the processes. And why should they in many cases? Because you don't know what the processes are. But that's why you've come to a professional company, and they're going to advise you that there are certain processes that we cannot move and they will take time. So typically we say with our funerals, we're giving our person 17 days. And in that 17 days, there's going to be days where you don't want to do anything. There are going to be days where you just want to sit, and the reality of, oh my goodness, I am actually planning a funeral for a person I'm never going to see again. That message hits home and it can debilitate you for a day, sometimes two. You need time in the process that you've given yourself to allow that to happen and to then get yourself back into play without having the panic of us then pushing to deliver a funeral within 10 days, 11 days. We must have this, we must have that. There is enough pressure going on without you needing that. So be mindful of giving yourself that time. Listen when it's been said to you, I think it would be better that you maybe looked at having this funeral a little bit later rather than sooner. And in some cases, if it's insistent that it's sooner, we will say that we can't do it because we are not going to be able to give you the quality of service that we are renowned for, and that I'm proud that we're renowned for, because we've just taken you and we can't deliver what you want. So what single message would I give to those planning a funeral, either before or after? So before, think about what it is that you're wanting your funeral to do. You know, if you've got specific requests, and in a lot of cases someone comes and they say, I don't want my children to have the worry of that. But it doesn't help if you then don't articulate exactly what it is that you're wanting for your funeral, because in a lot of cases we're saying, well, what was Mum's flowers? We don't know. What was her colours? We don't know. Did she want a coffin or a casket? We don't know. So we haven't left them with much. So think about what it is that you would like. Doesn't have to be elaborate plans, but leave them some plans. Yes. And it doesn't have to also cost you a fortune. Not everything about funeral planning says you have to find all that money that you now understand the funeral is going to cost and pay in one go. You can, there are plans that you can pay over a period of time. There are plans you pay nothing at all. You have the plan itemized. It tells you exactly how much it's going to cost you approximately. You then put that to one side. You can make your own arrangements to put your money to one side and tell your family where those plans are. That's one of the keys. Loads of people, I believe, have made plans. They didn't tell anybody where they were because, you know, our older generation can sometimes be a little bit secretive. But that secretiveness is not good if when the time they passed, no one knew they had a plan. So what happens in a lot of cases, the family will go and pay again. And no one will ever be the wiser, because if the person that has the plan has not been alerted that your loved one has died, how can they make a payment? So before, ensure that you think about what you want. Ensure that you have someone that you trust, that you can say, okay, my plans are here, your children, what have you. If not, your solicitor. Go to a solicitor, give him the plans, let him know exactly what's what. Think about making a will, because it will be in there. For when you're actually doing the funeral, the person's passed, the single key message is don't waste valuable time whilst you're going around, as I said before, trying to get costings, trying to barter down everybody because you've decided, you're being told it's £12. I'm sure if I barter them down, it will be 10, and we spend lots of time doing this, or we're having lots of family meetings, but John can't make it of the meeting. While all that's happening, your person is in the hospital. And they're in the hospital or they're in the mortuary and they haven't been collected. And that normal process of passing away is kicking in. And if you do not collect them quickly and have them embalmed if you want to see them, then you will run the risk of not being able to see them, because there are many establishments that will then freeze your person. And once a person is frozen, you can't see them, you can't dress them. And that is soul destroying. So be mindful of that. Just be very, very mindful of that. If I had a single message, that is the one for us planning a funeral. Yes, be sensible. Knowledge is power, as I've said before, but not to the detriment of you not being able to see your loved one again and say goodbye. So Pauline, what would you say is the most difficult part of your job? The absolute horror of my job is having to sit a family member down and tell them that they can't see their person again. They haven't taken into consideration, as I've just said, that the person has passed away. Particularly the older people, their bodies were frail when they passed. We celebrated a wonderful life the other day. I think it was 104 she was. But as wonderful as that age was, she was 104. So she'd passed, and what was needed was to get her quickly to be embalmed if the family wanted to see her. And embalming isn't guaranteed. It will depend on the wellness of your person who has passed away. And we can't tell you that exactly until we actually get them in our care, and then we'll say to you, they're fine, we're going to send them down to embalming. Or mum's body is a bit frail, dad's body is a bit frail, so we're going to do various procedures to ensure that we can get them to looking as well as possible so that you can hopefully see them again. But the most difficult part for me is to tell someone they will not be able to see their person. Sadly, my sister passed away. I wasn't able to see her. I have to say, at the time of her passing, I was grateful that I didn't have to go and see her. But when mum and dad passed, I was equally grateful, being older, being wiser, that I did have time to just go and be in that room with them. It's the acceptance of they are gone. I'm looking at the person, you look like mum, you look like dad, but, you're not answering me. You're just there. You're looking around thinking, but daddy is in this room with me, but he's not in the room with me. It's a really important. So we want to be able to give everybody that opportunity where we can. It's not possible for everybody, but there are some it has become impossible because they haven't taken heed. And in a lot of cases you don't know, but you haven't taken heed of the fact that, guys, while we're out there doing all the various things that we're doing alive, your person has passed and the process has started. So like what is the most difficult, we come to what is the most rewarding. Shashi with this big smile on her face. I have a special affinity with young people and the elderly people. And one of the most rewarding parts of my job is working with clients who come in either desperately confused, as a lot of the young are, their person has passed away, particularly a parent has passed away. I can think of one young man that I worked with. He was so confused, I don't even think he'd have been able to tell me his name properly if I asked him at the time. And it was to calm him down and to make sure that they understand we're here to work and help you, and then to help them paint the beauty of the day. Because again, funerals, I didn't think there was anything beautiful in a funeral. It's a coffin, it's a person who's passed away. There's nothing beautiful here. But having worked in the industry and helped create some of the things that are here, there is much, much beauty in a funeral day. So it's to work with that person, young or old, and to see that them calm down and then begin to smile. Some begin to laugh, because when they look at the plans they've put in place for their person, they are filled with pride. And that is a desperately rewarding part of my job. Likewise, like my mum and dad, they were together for 60 years. They had this little ritual of, who's going to make the tea this morning? Wasn't it your turn to go and make the tea? No, it's not my turn to go and make the tea. And they did all that stuff till eventually dad, I don't know why he bothered actually, because it was always him that was going to go and get that tea. But they did that for 60 years. And then when mummy passed, there was nobody to do that with. And so daddy in many cases when we were doing the funeral planning, his mind would just wander away. He couldn't believe where we were. So it's to physically sometimes, but metaphorically embrace those people and help them to plan. And, we have them all to come and sit in our office with us and have a cup of tea just to have someone to talk to. Love it. Absolutely love it. So it's to be there and help someone plan a real celebration of life for their person. And when it's all finished at the receptions that we're at in many cases, to see the absolute pride that's on their faces when they think, yeah, we did this. We did this for our person, and they will be so pleased. That for me is the most rewarding part of my job. So what makes personal touch funeral planning unique? We are the only one-stop shop funeral arranging service. And what that means is all aspects of the funeral service, the actual burial, the cremation, and the reception, we can look after, work with, plan, and deliver all of those three. There's no one else like us. Also, clients can choose as much of our services as possible or as little as possible, or they can cherry pick. So we have many clients who their parents or their family members have left a funeral plan to go with another funeral provider, another funeral director for the day. That gives them the cause that we talked about, as we said, the cars, booking a church for you for that day, booking the cemetery or the crematorium. But then all the other personal touches, your flowers, your order of services, your doves, your balloons, they'll come to us and ask us to plan all of those pieces for them, as well as their receptions. Everybody wants a really lovely, organized funeral, and that's one of the things we really pride ourselves on, that it moves really nice and moves at a steady pace. But where we saw that fall apart in many cases, when we got to the receptions, there was nobody there to manage them. There was nobody there to greet. There's nobody there to work out when different parts of the meal was going to come out. So we will go in and plan, we will decorate, we'll find the hall, we'll decorate, we'll do the catering, and then I and my team will host your event for you. That is absolutely unique. So it ensures that people come in, they are greeted, we take them to their seats, we find out who's got allergies, we give them some good soup and make sure that they've got something in their system ready. And then we manage very effectively how we go up, how we get meals, so that we don't have long queues, there isn't confusion, there isn't this panic of, oh my goodness, I'm not sure if we're going to get anything. Because, some of the people have been with you since really early in the morning and it's now late afternoon. So our uniqueness is our strength, that we are unique. There is no one else like us. And we deliver a fantastic service, which I'm incredibly proud of. And I can see Mummy and Daddy up there going, but my mum's up there laughing, thinking, I can't believe Pauline's doing this, because this was a girl who didn't want to sit down and have anything to do with funerals. And now she's here holding hands with it on a 24/7 basis. I know, Mum, but I'm here. So just as a summary, what are the three most important things to remember when you're planning a funeral for your loved one? I'd say the first one to remember is time and timing. Use your time wisely. Give yourself also, though, on the other hand of that, time to plan the funeral so that you can give the person the best funeral as possible. Don't let guilt, anger, confusion get in the way of your funeral planning, because they are not good drivers. They don't drive you to a positive place, particularly the guilt one. So be careful of that. Remember to let your loved one shine through. This is their day. You're planning the day for them. So let what they like plan through. You're the ambassadors for them. So what were the color schemes that they like? What flowers did they like? Would they like a coffin? Would they like a casket? Remember, sometimes the cemetery won't allow you to give them the casket and coffin. Know that not every wish that they had can we carry out sometimes, because there are, as we said, processes, there are rules, and they will need to be adhered to. And they don't really care that you had a meeting 2-3 years ago and told mum, dad, brother, sister that you would do, without the knowledge of what can be done. So be mindful of that, and don't let that guilt or don't let that pressure worry you. Get as much information as you can in a timely manner, so that time and timing, so that you don't have the risk of letting your person get to a place where you can't see them. Get them, make your decisions as quickly and effectively as possible so that your person can be taken by a funeral professional very quickly and looked after, giving you the opportunity to see them and say goodbye to them before the actual funeral day. In a lot of cases, you'll have the opportunity, if it's there, to have a private viewing with your person where you can then spend your time. Think about putting things you want to, if it's not going to be a cremation, but if it's a burial, you can put letters, you can put messages in, you can put little bits. Bible, my mum wanted her Bible, she wanted her glasses, both mummy and daddy wanted those, so we put them in. Just have a little time, give yourself time to think about all the things that you want to do, because that's what's going to give you comfort when you've laid them to rest. So what do our services include? Well, one of the things that we're really proud of is that we've made it simpler. It's easy, simpler, clearer is really important messages for me when looking at planning a funeral. So we've created 3 packages we have at the moment, soon to be 4. So packages for burial and packages for cremation. And the benefit of these packages is many of them incorporate all the things. 85% of what you're going to require for a funeral is in this package. And because it's in the package, then it's at a discounted rate in the package, which again is beneficial because we know that cost is important for everybody. But I want to stress, money is not what makes a beautiful funeral. Time, thinking, knowing what the options are is what will make a beautiful funeral. So remember that as well. It's not the bigger the budget, the lovelier funeral you're going to have. That doesn't work at all. So our packages, we have 3 packages for burial, as I said. The packages will include all the things that you'd want from a funeral director in terms of collecting your person, looking after them for a specific number of days, conducting the funeral on the day with a funeral director and pallbearers. And then the addition is me, because I will also be there on the morning of the funeral just to ensure that all the services that we've put in play are there, are in position, are there for the time, greet you when you arrive with my funeral directors and see you in to start your day off. If we're doing your reception, in many cases we are, I'd say easily 35% of the services that we have, we're doing their receptions. Then I will leave you with my funeral director and team, and I will go on to then oversee and ensure that your reception is in order so that by the time everybody arrives to the reception, myself and my team are there to greet, and we take over that as well. So the packages give you all that's necessary, order of services, it will give you flowers, it will give you, as I said, funeral program and funeral stationery, an e-announcement card, a large easel picture, letters, floral letters. So all these things, beauty on the day. There are those that have a price attached to them, that if you wanted to buy something more expensive, for example, you wanted more programs, or you wanted to have additional flowers, or you wanted to change and upgrade your coffin, because we have many beautiful bespoke ones, then there's a budget in that plan for that. And when we look at what you want and that's more expensive, that budget is then deducted. So you're only paying the extras. And then there are the independent services. So many of the services can be bought from us independently. Flowers can be bought from us independently. Probably our biggest second service is order of service and funeral programs, followed very, very closely by streaming and video services. Very big, very important. Since COVID, many people now see streaming as an automatic addition, because sadly many of the elders can't travel as they used to, and nor do they want to, in all fairness. But so streaming is a way that everybody can be present on the day. Very, very important. But videoing, let's not forget the videoing as well, because the videoing is your own personal keepsake. If there's one thing I wish I had at the time, it was a video of mum and dad. At the time, that wasn't being done. And I'm not sure I would have looked at it for a while because it would have upset me. But now, years down the road, I would wanted to have a look. I understood there were a lot of people there when we were growing up that we didn't see. I would have liked to have seen them. I'd have liked to have heard the messages much clearer because, you know, we're covered in grief and crying and we weren't hearing them as well. Photography is another one of our big services. So in our media division, we've got streaming photography and we've got the video services. And people say, well, I don't want someone in my face with a camera. but they're not. They will stand away. And their job, all of them, is to capture the beauty of the day that we sometimes miss because the grief and the reality of, oh my goodness, I'm never going to see this person again, is so in our face at that time. So those are some of the services. And then we go on to the receptions. We will find a hall for you, depending on the numbers that you've got. We've got 2 to 3 menus, and we can mix and match those menus. We have different cuisines. So you've got Caribbean, you've got European, you've got Guyanese, we've got a bit of Asian, we've got the West African. So quite a lot of cultures that we can give on the Caribbean side, on the catering side. And then we decorate the hall as well. So if we've got a color scheme for a person, let's say it's Barbados, it's the yellow and the blue, we can run that right the way through, from the flowers, the order of service, get to the reception, the decor, the flowers, make sure there's some good Bayesian bits within the menu to ensure that we're reflecting the homeland of that person at all times. Daddy was a real, true, proud Jamaican. So after Mummy passed, I used Dad a bit as my little guinea pig to say, Dad, okay, let's look at the things that you wished you would like and what would you like for yourself? And one of the things Dad said was, I want it shown that I am a proud Jamaican. So we then introduced our range of funeral stationery that covered the islands. And that has grown quite significantly over the years. But that's definitely a nod to my dad. So lots of different packages. We probably have one of the widest wealth of packages that any funeral director offers. But that's not to say because the other funeral directors don't offer it from a director's point of service. We are funeral directors, remember, and event planners. So all that's necessary, we see funerals as an event. And it's going to be planned. Really, it's just like we're planning a wedding, but it's a funeral. No different to us. It needs to be beautiful. It needs to reflect the person. It needs to fit in within the budgets that are there. And it needs to fill whoever has planned it with pride to say, I've done my person proud. So we're going to look at the 5 most asked questions that we've had since we've been doing funerals. The number 1 question that we get asked consistently is, how much does a typical funeral cost? The quick answer to that is there is no immediate answer to that because it will depend on a number of things. What choice of funeral are you looking at having? Are you looking at having a burial? Are you looking at having a cremation? Or are you looking at having a person repatriated back to a country where then the service and burial plans are going to take place? If it's going to be a burial, then the burial costs will vary dramatically from borough to borough. Every borough has cemeteries, and every cemetery has different rates. Not only that, but they have a rate for residents. Those who reside in the borough get a preferential rate. And then they have a rate for non-residents, those who don't reside in the borough. Because quite simply, most of the cemeteries are running out of space. And so they want to hold on to that space in the main for their residents. But they are willing for others to come in to there. So for example, we lived in Croydon, Mum and Dad were in Lambeth. If we wanted to bring them over to Croydon, then Mum and Dad would have been classed as non-residents. And that would be reflected in the cost of the grave. Know also that there are 2 costs with a grave. There's the actual cost of the ground, which is the grave. And then there's a word you'll hear bandied around called interment. It is the cost to place the person into that grave. Graves can be typically for 2. There are some for 1, but for 2 in many cases is exactly the same pricing as if you had it for 1 person. And then there were, I say were because very few cemeteries have this, whereby you could have more than 2. It was 3, and in some cases, places like Southwark and Wandsworth had the ability to have 4 people in the grave. But we've found that is now calming down, and predominantly it is a grave for 2. So you're going to pay the price for the grave as a resident, and then the person going into the grave, if also a resident, will pay the interment cost for that. So 2 prices together. If you are asking for one of your persons or a person to be buried that is living outside of the borough, you could find that you're paying non-resident fees, which in some boroughs can be as high as 4 times the amount as the resident fee. You might pay that for both the grave itself and for the person to go into the grave. Every cemetery has different rulings, has different costings. So that's why one of the key things we ask you when you ring through is, what are you looking at, cremation or burial, and what borough did your person reside in, so that we can ensure that we give you the correct rate and also give you that piece of information. Cremation, for a lot of, and I'll just say black people, for a lot of us as people of colour, it isn't something that we particularly liked. We didn't like it because it's very fast. We have a thing about burning. We don't want our persons to burn. Our elderlies would say to us, don't burn me. So cremation is not something we looked at. When I came into the business 15 years ago, cremation may have taken up 10%, if that, of those people of colour who said that they wanted to be cremated. That figure now is rising. I'd say maybe 35% of the people that we do funerals for, they are cremations. So if it's a cremation, it's going to be a shorter service. The cost for the cremation also involves a chapel. That is no extra for either half an hour, 45 minutes, or an hour. They have varying times. And there are lots of things to do with cremations that are quite positive, but we'll come back to those in a minute. And then, of course, there's repatriation. Your person has passed away here and you'd like to send them back to the West Indies, to Africa, to Europe, where that was their place of origin. So costing of a burial approximately will be anything in the region of, I'd say, £8,500 to £12,000. And that depends on the cemetery, it depends on their costs, it depends on then what services you employ from the funeral director and what additions you add to that. Remember, you are the driver in many cases as to what your costs are going to be. Cremation is far less. Cremation runs from, I'd say, £3,500 to £5,000, and that's a service that you're going to attend. There's going to be a service for that person and then the cremation. But there are many unattended services now being offered. They don't suit everybody, but they are there, and they will come in much less. They will be in the region of about £1,200 to £1,800. Repatriation, I always understood, was vastly expensive. People would always bandy around figures, oh, 12,000, 15,000, 20,000. To repatriate your person home, if you're sending them straight home, having no service in England, it can cost as little as £6,000. If you're going to have a service here, and in a lot of cases that is the case because this is where they lived, and then you're going to send them home. And remember, when you send them home, it's to a funeral director, and then the services of the funeral director are going to kick in there. Then it's going to be higher. All right. It's going to be in the regions of about the 8-ish thousand. But I cannot think of one that we've done that was 12 or 15. Okay. So that's a little bit of a myth now. It is on par, I would say, with having a burial in the UK. All right. So let's look at cremations. So questions to be asked on cremations is what's involved in a cremation? Because for a lot of people, they didn't even want to look at it. The crematorium is where the service is held. They are, as I said, between 30, 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the different crematoriums. A lot of crematoriums are also in the same grounds as the cemetery. And it's for a shorter service, or has been for a shorter service, where that's where your final resting place will be for your person. You'd leave the crematorium and there would be a plaque with their name and flowers would be there where you could take pictures and you could have balloon releases and all those sorts of things. And then you'd go back to the crematorium a couple of days later to actually collect the ashes for the person. So that's what's involved. For a lot of people, they found that service was far too short. So the question then came, can we have a church service as well as a cremation? And the answer is yes. That is something that a lot of people are having. So they would go off typically with the traditional church service before, and then the final resting place where it would be burial, the burial ground at cemetery. If it was burial, it would be the crematorium where a short service is then used in that 45 minutes. You may only use 20 minutes of it. And that then will be the final resting place. Yeah. With cremation as well, there are many things that you can have. So one of the things to think about is that you can have a bench, dedicated to your person. You can actually have a cremated remains grave that emulates a burial grave. So it is a grave that will take up to 6 of the ashes. And it also can have its own headstone where you can then put flowers on. So it acts in exactly the same way as a main burial grave, but it's just a smaller size. But the key for most people is they've got a place that they can go back to. They can lay flowers. For a lot of you, I know it's very comforting to go to the grave and sit with your person and just advise them as what's been happening in life since they've been gone, and just in your own lives. And, you know, if you've had children and the grandchildren and all that sort of stuff. And I think for a lot of people, they felt they want to have that, and the only thing that's going to give them that is to have a burial. But that's not the case. If you can also now have cremated remains graves. So those are our 5 most asked questions. Thank you. So what do we offer with our receptions, which is quite unique to ourselves? Basically what we do is we ensure that the same quality runs right the way through. So often we've seen funerals whereby they've been run beautifully. The client's shoulders are coming down, their chests are pumped with pride because they've done really well for their person. And then they get to a reception hall and chaos ensues, which just removes the goodness of the day. So we work with them to ensure that runs right the way through. We'll source halls, so we have a number of halls that we've worked with, a number of halls that we can advise them on, a number of people that we can speak to. So that's the first thing, is to get a hall that's going to suit the numbers that they're looking for. Then we will decorate the hall in the choice of colours that they want. So we have quite a large catalogue of photos to show the different styles of decorating that we do. We have our own caterers, so there's personal touch funerals, personal touch celebrations, personal touch catering. So our own caterers kicked in 2 years ago and are doing brilliantly. So we have our own caterers, and the reason for that is so that we can control. It's important. We can't go there and say that we're going to host and manage an event when we don't know how the services are going to perform for us to do that. So we'll go get the hall, decorate the hall, do the catering, and then we'll manage that event. I will be there with my team. We greet the people as they come in, we get them seated, we work out the reserved number of tables that our clients need, and then we'll host the actual part of the food service for them and ensure that everything is in place. Because for a lot of these halls, there is quite a hefty deposit to be given back at the end of the day. And the clients want that deposit back, but it depends on how the hall is left. Did they leave it in the way that they got it? And we ensure that that happens so that that can go forward. So quite a lot of things there. But in a nutshell, it's the same professionality that we've given over to the funeral service. We believe the same should be given to the reception. And where we can, we'll tie it in with the same colour schemes, so running all the way through, so that everyone coming can see this was a thought out event. It wasn't a put together, thrown together event, which again, all adds to that family being able to rest, because that's what gives me comfort. It gives me great comfort to know that my mum and dad had a really nice funeral service, particularly my dad, because we were able to ask him all the things he wanted. And whereas mum was telling us and I didn't want to listen, with daddy we did listen and we implemented many of them, and many of them are still in place today. One of the wonderful things that my dad talked about was photos. You know what? That's one of the most difficult parts of the job, is finding the photos to go into the funeral programs. And one of the things that we do is we've now got the legacy calendars. So our legacy calendars are really important because they are, as their name suggests, they carry pictures of family members. In my parents' one, there was a picture of my grandparents. It is the only picture in existence in the world of them. So to be able to now duplicate this calendar, and all my cousins had it and the cousins' children had it, because otherwise they'd never know what their great-grand looked like. So that was really, really nice. So our legacy calendar is a gift, our way of saying thank you to the clients of entrusting us with their funeral. And we do those yearly, and we're just working on our 2026 one. And for a lot of the people that we work with, we gift them the first one, and then they'll buy them as gifts. They make great Christmas gifts, particularly for the youngers. Thank you.